Have you ever wondered what it would be like to retire in the third cheapest country in the EU? I have lived in this country for several years. Some myths make people think this country is boring, others believe it's grey and cold. This couldn't be further from the truth. I'm often amazed by the explosion of colors, impressed by how safe it feels, how good are the roads and how easy it is to travel around, how tasty are the fruits, and how spectacular are the parks. But above all, what amazes me the most is how inexpensive life is here. Imagine someone asks you, is it possible to live comfortably in Poland at half the cost of living in the US? Here is the answer: no. It's not only possible to live comfortably with half of the cost of living in the US, because with that money, after watching this video, you will realize that you can live like a king, or even better than a king, because there will be nobody saying liberum veto to you. Sorry, unless you're a Polish or historian, likely you didn't get this joke. First, we start with the surprising pros of living in Poland, things that nobody told you before. Then, we also expose the negative sides, and by the end of this video, you will discover 5 places that offer you unbelievable value with real proof from people who had been there, like me. So let's start with the biggest pros of retiring Poland as an expat. The first one is often overlooked, but very important for foreigners like us. And that is the fact that Poland is a very Central European country. Living in Central Europe has its benefits. Poland has multiple international airports, offering quick flights to several iconic destinations. A short flight can take you to cities like Paris, London, or Rome. If you miss mild winters, Malta or Cyprus are just a few hours away by plane. If you want to fly really cheap, you can use a combination of rail and flight, because from Warsaw, you can reach Berlin in just 5 hours and a half by train, and from Berlin, flights to places like America are much cheaper. The next pro of Poland is also very notorious. It's a very safe country. In 2022, Poland, the entire country, had 270 homicides in total. Let's put this number in perspective. Philadelphia, one single city in Pennsylvania, had 410 homicides in 2023. So Poland, with 38 million residents, had fewer killings than Philadelphia, a city with 1.6 million people. Of course, like most countries, there are some regions in Poland that are more dangerous than others. For example, Mazovia, the region around Warsaw, accounts for over a quarter of all homicides. But even if you compare the dangerous parts of Poland with other parts of Europe, the Polish side is still much safer. Let's talk numbers. For example, the occurrence of sexual crimes. In Stockholm, Sweden, there are 6.9 cases per every 100,000 residents per year. In Paris, France, 2.1 cases per every 100,000 people per year. Berlin, Germany, 1.4. Rome in Italy, 1.2. But in Warsaw, Poland, just 0.9. Let's check other crime types like burglaries. And here we are also talking number of cases per 100,000 residents per year. Well, again, Stockholm is at the top, 539.9. Paris, 396. Berlin, 341. Rome, 250. Warsaw, 210, or less than half the rate of burglaries of Stockholm. Assaults, once more the rate per 100,000 people per year. Stockholm, 3,107. Paris, 2,694. Berlin, 2,332. Rome, 2,020. Warsaw, 1,600. Almost 50% less than Stockholm. So I think you get it, right? Even the most dangerous parts of Poland are still safe. Now, going to more practical terms, another positive in Poland is that the public transport is incredibly good. Only Warsaw has a subway system. However, all major cities, from Gdansk to Krakow, from Poznan to Lublin, have very well developed tram systems. They are frequent and punctual, and ticket prices are reasonable compared to other European cities, except for Łódź, where they are surprisingly expensive. A 20-minute ride in Warsaw costs 3.4 zlotys, or just 8 cents of euro, making it one of the cheapest in Europe. And as I mentioned before, the intercity rail transport is quite good too. Interestingly, many trains in Poland have restaurant cars, and their food is delicious and not expensive. The next pro is healthcare. And if you talk to a Polish person about this, Maybe he might say that healthcare here sucks, but from my experience, public hospitals in general are good, or at least decent. Since I moved to Poland, I went through 2 surgeries in 2 different hospitals in 2 different cities. One of them was a public hospital in Lublin that was very good, the same quality of a private hospital in many countries. And the other was a public hospital in Łódź that was decent. The biggest problem of Polish healthcare is the time you must wait. Some people say they need to wait for months to see a doctor, but overall, the quality of hospitals is not bad, except for food, which is, well, meh. A curious fact is that one of the best hospitals in Central Europe is the Uniwersyteckie Centrum Kliniczne Warszawskiego Uniwersytetu Medycznego. And the next benefit of living in Poland, probably the one you have been waiting for, is the low cost of living. Poland is the 3rd cheapest country to live in the European Union. Only Romania and Bulgaria are cheaper. But when we talk about the cost of living in Poland, there is a very, very big but. A mistake that if you do, you end up paying prices higher than Germany. This mistake actually is the first negative aspect of our list of negative points. Poland might have some of the best value to retire in the EU, but this doesn't apply to Warsaw. Yeah, this is the mistake I'm talking about, to think that the low cost of living in Poland is also valid for its capital. It's not. Warsaw is surprisingly expensive. For example, on average, Poland is a country cheaper than Hungary, but the Polish capital is 76% more expensive than the Hungarian capital. The main reason the cost of living in Warsaw is high is that housing is much more expensive than in the rest of Poland. There are apartments in the Polish capital being negotiated at more than 75,000 zlotys per square meter, meaning more than $19,300 per square meter. This is a price level that you could expect from a luxury apartment in cities like Berlin, Rome, or even Amsterdam. Meanwhile, in some good medium Polish cities, you can find apartments for prices up to 82% cheaper than a similar one in Warsaw. So yes, Poland is in general a country with low cost of living, but not Warsaw. The next negative aspect that many foreigners living in Poland get used to after some time is the weather. For half of the year, Poland's weather can be quite depressing. The issue isn't the cold weather itself. The real problem is the darkness. This is a real issue here, especially when the days are short and the sun sets around 3:30 p.m. in the winter. Problems like seasonal affective disorder and vitamin D deficiency might come hard. Here's a personal tale. When I moved to Poland during my first winter, I was getting sick all the time. My doctor asked for some exams, and we discovered that my levels of vitamin D were below 20 ng per ml. That is very low. The doctor told me that this is very common, since in the winter it's dark most of the time. The short daylight hours make many people feel constantly tired and miserable. If you come from places like California or Texas, with constant sunshine, the drastic change can be quite challenging. This issue mostly affects the months between November and February. The rest of the year, the weather is quite nice and even pleasant. The next negative aspect of Poland is probably the most famous of all, but before I review it, I would like to ask a small favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. So let's talk about the feared language barrier. For English speakers, Polish is one of the hardest Western languages to learn because of its Slavic grammar. And of all Slavic languages, it's likely the most difficult, since it has so many grammar cases. Well-known languages like English, Portuguese, Spanish, French, or Italian have no grammar cases. Meanwhile, languages that are considered hard like German, Norwegian, or Greek have between 2 to 4 cases. Polish, meanwhile, has 7 cases. Almost every word has multiple different forms. For example, depending on the function it has in the phrase, a dog can be a pies, psa, psu, psem, psie, or piesku. If you're carrying a dog, it's one thing. If you're calling a dog, it's another thing. Does that sound complicated? Here's a hint. It is complicated if you try to memorize all the rules and declinations. But there is a magic way to learn it. Once you start being exposed to the Polish language, like watching Polish cartoons or trying to talk to Polish people, after some time, you will realize that you're using the correct cases even without knowing that you're doing so. It's like you learn it then subconsciously. This is exactly what happened to me. For this, however, you should study the language in a way that favors exposition, not memorization of grammar rules. I used a certain method to learn Polish that favors exposition and conversation, and it also makes it very fun to learn. I put the link in the comment section, and there is an added bonus there, so just check it later. Now, going back to the cons of living in Poland, the next are certain social norms that exist in Poland. I'm not saying they're bad, just that they might be hard to get used to. When you first meet Polish people, it might feel like talking to a border guard. At first, they may seem aloof, or even rude, but once you know them, they're friendly. However, if you're used to the superficial friendliness from countries like the US or Canada, or the over-the-top warmth of Latin America, it can be a bit of a shock, especially if the person in question works in a public office and you need something, because then you have an added negative aspect, the bureaucracy. Be prepared for some bureaucratic hurdles. Getting a visa or residence card can be exasperatingly slow process. What should take months often stretches into years due to the cumbersome paperwork and slow administrative process. If you plan to retire in Poland as an EU citizen, the amount of bureaucracy you face is not much bigger than a Pole would experience. However, if you are a no-EU citizen, and in this case you can apply for a temporary residence based on financial self-sufficiency, you must prove that you have enough stable and regular income to cover your living expenses in Poland. The specific amount depends on the region. Now let's review the 5 best places to retire in Poland. I've ranked these from my experience and from other residents and tons of data. You can access the sources I used and have many other benefits by subscribing to my Patreon. Tier 2 members get my 3 best-selling books about life abroad, while Tier 3 members get a one-on-one call to discuss moving abroad. But hurry, this offer is limited to the first 20 subscribers. Now back to the subject. Which cities are the best if you are planning to move and retire in Poland? We start with Zielona Góra. This is a city with around 140,000 residents in western Poland, close to Germany. The city is located between 2 large cities, Poznan, 1.5 hours by car, and Berlin, 2.5 hours, via expressway and highway. A Flixbus to Berlin costs less than 14 euros, so you can go for a day trip if you get bored. Of all the 16 Polish regional capitals, Zielona Góra is the second cheapest, and the average housing price there is almost 60% lower than in Warsaw. The climate there is also not as cold as in other parts of Poland. They even have wineries. Here's what a local told us about life there. Open quote. Zielona Góra is great. Not too big, not too small. It's just right in the middle. End quote. Now let's imagine you want to rent an apartment in Zielona Góra and your budget is $850, which is less than half of the average rent of a 1-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia, a city 25 times more violent than Poland. $850 is the equivalent of 3,300 zlotys, so this is our maximum budget. With this budget, you can rent in Zielona Góra a 3-bedroom apartment with 70 square meters, built with high standard materials and already equipped, in a quiet part of the city but conveniently close to the city center. And all that for 2,800 zlotys, or less than $730. In Philadelphia, with only $730 of budget, you would live in Kensington, where, well, you might get stabbed by the fentanyl junkies occupying the sidewalks. But I promise you the 5 best places to live in Poland, and the next on the list is Gdynia. This city is an interesting case because it's a medium city with 244,000 residents, but it's part of a metropolitan area called Tri-City, Trójmiasto. Often Poles do not refer to Gdynia alone, but to the entire metropolitan area as a single entity. So while having the calmness and pace of a medium city, Gdynia offers all the conveniences of a larger metropolis. According to Eurostat, Gdynia consistently tops Poland's quality of life index, offering better air quality and more green spaces than cities like Warsaw or Krakow. The coastal location gives access to beaches, which you can effortlessly go by using public transport. And talking about that, Gdynia has a well-developed public transport system, including buses and trolley buses, and easy access to Gdańsk's Lech Wałęsa airport for international flights. I went a few times there, some of my friends live there. It's indeed a nice city. This is what a local told us about Gdynia. Open quote. Sea, lakes, forests, hills, If you like mountain biking, you would be nicely surprised. Clean air, 3 interesting cities in the price of 1. End quote. Entering to the subject of cost of living, Gdynia is not as cheap as Zielona Góra, but it's not expensive either. For our budget of $850 per month or less, you will easily find plenty of apartments close to the sea, like this one here that is just a short 15-minute walk from the sea promenade and for a mere 1,900 zlotys per month, less than $500. The next city might surprise some Poles. It's Bielsko-Biała. I went to Bielsko-Biała multiple times because it's close to one of my favorite ski resorts in Poland, called Czyrk. With a population of around 170,000 people, it combines the charm of a smaller city and the convenience of urban life. The city itself is a bit gray, but the nature surrounding is splendid, both in the summer and during the winter. A local told us this about Bielsko-Biała, open quote, absolutely the best city to live in Poland. Not too big, not too small, nice views, skiing, and Czech beer in 25 minutes, driving distance. End quote. And the fact that there are so many parks, ski areas, and other tourist attractions nearby, surprisingly, does not make the city expensive. For less than $600 per month, you can live in a 3-bedroom apartment in a historical building in the center of the city. The 4th and 5th cities that I recommend are Pruszków and Piaseczno. Both cities have less than 70,000 residents, but they are ideal for those who want to live close to Warsaw. As I said, Warsaw is very expensive when compared to the rest of Poland. But these 2 smaller cities are connected to the capital by very frequent trains. The prices are super low, and it takes less than 20 minutes to arrive to Warsaw downtown. Here is what a resident of one of them told us. Open quote. Pruszków is great, about 20 minutes by train to Warsaw and has everything you would expect. End quote. Another good advantage is that these cities are very family-friendly and quite calm despite being so close to Warsaw. Remember the palace I showed at the very beginning of this video? The one with 450 square meters, almost 5,000 square feet, that cost 9,000 zlotys to rent or $2,300. So it costs 35% less than an apartment in Boston. One could think that such a gem is far from any city in Poland, in the middle of nowhere, but it's just on the outskirts of Piaseczno, less than 24 kilometers from the center of Warsaw. And if you enjoy the idea of living in a palace, but Poland sounds a bit too cold for you, we made a special video about a place in the Mediterranean called Agrigento. To watch it, click on this video here at your left. There, you can live in a noble house for less than you imagine.